Hi, my name is Vic, and today we're going to be talking about how you can build your data project portfolio. First, we're going to cover what goes into a good project. Then we're going to talk about how you can present your projects in a portfolio, and we're going to end with how you can actually make your portfolio stand out to hiring managers. Why do you need a portfolio? So when you have a lot of experience in data, you can point to your last 10 jobs and say, hey, this is proof that I actually have the right skills. But if you don't have any experience, then you actually need to use your portfolio to show that you can do the data work that your company is looking for. So a portfolio is really a way for you to prove you have the skills and you can use them in the real world. Why am I talking to you about this? So I'm a self-taught data scientist. I didn't go to school for this. And projects were a really important part of how I got my first data job. And a few years ago, I started a company called Dataquest that's helped tens of thousands of learners master data skills and start their careers. So I'm going to take the lessons that I learned from my own learning journey and from helping tens of thousands of people start their own data careers and show you the right way to really build your portfolio and get your foot in the door. All right, let's dive in. And here's an agenda for what we'll be talking about today. We'll start out by just talking about a portfolio, what it is and why you need it. Then we'll talk about how to build a good data project. Then we'll talk about some principles that you should keep in mind for building and presenting projects in your portfolio. And then we'll actually talk about how to build your portfolio out and how you can improve your projects over time. So by the end of this session, you should really understand how to build your portfolio and how to really position yourself to employers effectively with it. So let's start out with what a portfolio is. So a portfolio is really a series of projects, usually between 3 and 10, that help you prove your skills to employers. And you can put this on your resume, you can share your GitHub link with employers, and it helps them understand what skills you have and how you approach data problems. So some examples of projects that might go into your portfolio are a weather forecasting project, visualizing box office earnings, and scraping Wikipedia pages. So these are all examples of projects that help demonstrate your data skills to employers. Now, why do you need to do that? Why do you need a portfolio? A portfolio proves you have the right skills. Because if you're just getting started in data, you don't have experience. So you can't say, I have the skills because I have 5 previous roles where I did X, Y, and Z. Instead, you have to use your portfolio to really demonstrate that you can do the job. So that's what a portfolio does for you. It helps show employers that you have the right skills and you can actually apply those skills to real-world problems. So keep that in mind, and we'll talk about how to actually start building good projects that can go into your portfolio. So there's 2 main kinds of projects that go into a portfolio, and it really depends what role you're going for. So the first kind of project is more of a reporting and analysis project. So this is useful for data analysts, data scientists, and business analysts. And the goal is to show that you can get insights from data and that you can actually report those insights effectively. So you'll be using skills like data visualization, data cleaning, and machine learning. And this kind of portfolio project is very commonly done in tools like Jupyter, RStudio, and if you're a business analyst, tools like Power BI and Tableau. So tools where you're able to really explore data and tell a story. And this type of project, I've created hundreds of these, and there are a few key steps that you should follow to build your project out. You should start by creating a hypothesis, and I'll show you an example of this in a bit. Then you should analyze the data to really discover any trends or interesting facets of the data. Then you should try to prove your hypothesis, or not. And then you should ask follow-up questions. So continue improving your technique, continue looking for more hypotheses to prove or disprove, and then think about your next steps. So write down some next steps that you might take if you were going to continue building the project out. So the example I'll show you is predicting the stock market. So this is a project that I actually used to get my foot in the door when I was first building up my data portfolio and getting my first data job. And it's a really fun project and a really interesting one because you can start out with relatively straightforward data sets and analysis, and you can get more and more complex over time. So this is a great beginner project, and I'm going to use it to show you how these 5 steps work, these 5 steps with building a project out. So first you start with the hypothesis. And for a stock price prediction project, your hypothesis might be, hey, if we have historical stock market data, we will be able to predict the future. So essentially we can predict days when the stock market will go up. So that could be your hypothesis. Then you can download and analyze data. So this is an example from a project that I did where we downloaded Microsoft stock price data and then did a little bit of analysis just to get a sense of what the data looked like. Then you want to try to prove your hypothesis. So in this case, we actually built out a machine learning model to try to see, can we actually predict if the stock market will go up or down based on historical data? So that's what this is doing. Then asking follow-up questions. And in this case, what that meant was continuing to improve the model accuracy. So adding in more predictors that can help the model make better predictions about if the stock price will go up or down. And then ending with some next steps. So noting down some things we could do to continue improving this project. And this is useful in 2 ways. One, if you ever come back to this project and want to continue building it out, this is a really handy guidepost for you. And 2, employers like to see that you're able to think beyond what you built and you're able to think about how you can actually improve it and continue making it better. So those are the 5 steps of really building a successful reporting project. Now let's talk about the other type of project that you might want to put in your portfolio depending on your role. And this is more of the coding project. So this is what a data engineer, a machine learning engineer, or a data scientist would want in their portfolio. And the goal here is to show that you can write and deploy high performance code. And some of the key skills are software engineering, pipelines, and deployment. And typically you would be building this project in Jupyter Lab, which is an IDE, PyCharm, which is a Python IDE, or Visual Studio Code. So those are kind of the types of tools that you would use to build this project. And the steps to create this project look a little bit different from the steps to create a reporting project, but conceptually they aren't actually that different. So you want to find a data set, then you want to build a pipeline to transform the data or create predictions. And a pipeline is just a series of steps you're applying to the data. So step 1 might be clean the data. Step 2 might be change the data into a format that gets it ready for machine learning. Step 3 might be creating predictions. Then you want to implement the pipeline. You want to improve performance. So that in this case mostly means either if you're building a machine learning model, the error and accuracy of the model, and how fast it runs. So if you're building a coding project, you want to make sure it runs quickly and efficiently. You don't want something that's very inefficient and has a lot of messy code. And again, you want to think about next steps. So one example of this style of project is this project I built a while ago to predict loan defaults. So you can see there's several different files here. Everything's not in a single notebook like it was with our previous project. And there is some explanation in this README file about how to actually install and use the project. So these projects tend to be more code oriented. You're not really reporting your results and telling that story. Instead, you're really telling people, how do you use these different files? How do they fit together? How do you actually run this project effectively? So I'm not going to go through every single step in the coding project because there's a lot of overlap with the reporting project, but just know that's the main difference. You're using multiple code files, and it's really about making sure your code runs quickly and efficiently versus really just sharing your results and making sure your story is compelling. That's the big difference between these project types. And usually, if you're a data engineer or a machine learning engineer, you're going to be building these coding projects. If you're a data scientist, data analyst, business analyst, you'll be building more reporting projects, although data scientists sometimes have both in their portfolio. All right. So we covered a lot. Now that we know how to actually build these projects out conceptually, let's talk about some key principles you can use for really presenting your projects effectively. So, when hiring managers look at projects, what they're looking at is a few things. They're checking to see if you have used all of the key skills correctly. So, if machine learning is a key skill in your project, they want to make sure you actually used machine learning effectively. They want to make sure your code is clean. So, that means that your code is straightforward, to the point, doesn't necessarily have low performance because it's doing a lot of things that aren't necessary. They want to make sure that you're communicating effectively. So, both in comments in your code and just in your README and other files about your code. They're looking for analysis and interpretation. So, did you come to the right conclusions based on the work you did? And real world applicability, which is really important. There's a lot of data sets out there that just don't fit the real world. They're either too clean or they're fake in some way. And real world applicability is really important. Hiring managers are looking to make sure that you understand what it's like to do a real world data analysis and that you can make the right trade offs and assumptions. Okay, so most of this stuff will already be taken care of if you follow the steps that I talked about earlier. Hiring managers will get a good impression. But there's a few tips I want to share with you that you can use to really present your portfolio effectively and really impress hiring managers on these points. So, one, make your projects easy to find. Don't be that person that shares a long Word document with a bunch of links and screenshots and other stuff. Put your projects on GitHub. That's what everyone does. That's where hiring managers know where to look. It's really easy to find projects on GitHub and click into them and explore them. So put your projects on GitHub. Make them easy to find. And also make them easy to navigate. So you can see there's several different files in this project, and there is a README file that explains what they are and walks you through installation. You can't quite see the installation piece, but it talks you through how to actually use it. So make sure your projects are easy to find and easy to use. Make sure you're explaining exactly what you're doing. So this is that README from the previous slide, but the lower part of it. But yeah, explain exactly how someone can use your project, both installing it and what you're doing in the project, so they can follow along with what you're doing. Use real world data. So some examples are stock market data. So you can download stock market data directly via API. Weather data, sports stats, book reviews. Use data that is a little bit messy and isn't perfectly clean. Don't just go to a website that hosts a bunch of data sets and find a really clean data set. Because on the job, in the real world, you are going to have to work with messy data sets, real world data sets. And the hiring manager, whoever's looking at your portfolio, is going to make sure that you have experience doing that in your project. If your project is working on data that's too clean or doesn't have a real world tie in, your project isn't going to look as good. Next, you want to tell a story in your project. And this isn't always possible depending on the project, but try to really tell a story about what you're doing and why. So in this case, the stock price prediction project, we're telling the story that we want to make money buying stocks. And therefore, we want to predict days when the stock market is going up. And the whole project is built around that, right? The idea of following that story and really figuring out if we can do that. And continuously revise your projects. Don't just build a project and put it out there, because every month your coding skills and your data skills are going to advance so much. And what you want to make sure is that your projects reflect your current skills, not your skills 6 months ago or a year ago. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but make sure you're coming back to your project and updating it as you learn new stuff. Really, really important. All right, now let's talk about how you can actually build and present your portfolio. So first off, you need about 3 to 8 great projects in your portfolio. Quality is more important than quantity. Don't feel like you have to build out 50 projects. Really make sure you build out a few good ones. No hiring manager is going to read through 50 or 100 projects. They're going to look for a few. And if most of your projects aren't very good, they're just going to scan through a couple, see that they're not very good, and move on. So the fewer good projects you have, the better. You want to make sure that all of your projects are high quality. And what you can do is you can actually build projects, and you should build projects from very early in your learning journey. So if you're learning basic Python, basic R, you can actually build projects very quickly. And at Dataquest, we actually have you start building projects after your first couple programming courses. And the reason for this is you can keep going back to earlier projects and improving them. And that A, helps you learn, and B, shows hiring managers that you're iterating on your project and improving it over time. So, really important to both build a few great projects and continuously revise and update your projects. So, don't feel like you have to learn 1,000 things before you start building your first projects. Build your projects pretty early. Gino is a Dataquest learner who went from no coding background to a data engineering job, which was amazing. And he did it by building out 8 extensive projects as he was learning on Dataquest. And he did exactly what I just mentioned. He would keep going back to earlier projects and revising them and updating them. And as I mentioned before, quality is the most important thing in a portfolio. Make sure your projects are high quality. And another Dataquest learner, Eddie, he actually went from no coding background to a data scientist job. And one of the things he did that I thought was really interesting is he reached out to friends and former colleagues to see if they had any projects he could help with. And that's actually a really great way to get real world data. So see if anyone at your work needs help with their data challenges, or anyone in your life. And that's a great way to get project ideas and interesting data sets, and also build your resume. All right, I'm going to end with some ideas for projects that you can try. So one is predicting the weather with machine learning. And if you check the Dataquest YouTube channel, you can actually find a video that walks you through this. Another one is visualizing beer reviews and ratings with Python. Another is predicting the stock market with machine learning. So these are all potential project ideas, just some examples to kind of get you started. And if you need places to go to find more ideas, Dataquest has dozens of guided projects. So these are projects that show you how to actually build projects. They walk you through each step in the project and help you build out a project in a structured way. So that's a great place to find projects that have already the scaffolding is built out and you can just work through them. The Dataquest YouTube channel also has lots of great project walkthroughs that go from end to end. So things like predicting the weather, predicting football match winners, predicting who's going to win NBA MVP. These are all projects that we have on our YouTube channel. Kaggle is also a good source for data and projects. You usually have to do more work because there's not always fully walk through examples and guidance on how to build the project, but it's a good place to go if you need data sets and ideas. And finally, Dataquest is a great place to learn and build your portfolio. So the portfolio building method I just covered has helped tens of thousands of learners go from no coding background to a data job. And 97% of our learners recommend us for career advancement. And learners who take more than 10 courses and build the right projects get a $30,000 salary boost. And the reason for this is Dataquest is challenging. To get a job in the data space, it takes a lot of skills and it takes effort. It's not easy. But that doesn't mean you can't do it, right? Anyone can learn the right skills and get a data job if you're willing to put in the work. And if you're willing to put in the work, Dataquest can help you by giving you the right structure and guidance to actually get to your goal. And this quote from Gino I love because it really summarizes what I just said, right? Dataquest is going to be challenging. You're not just going to be able to sit back and watch videos, but it will get you to your goals more effectively than any other place. And finally, thanks for watching. If you want to try out Dataquest, you can. I've shared the URL here. And even if you aren't going to use Dataquest, I hope this method will help you in your data learning journey. All right, thank you.